The college football playoff committee got it wrong once again. A bunch of people who don't understand anything and a group who all claim one thing but do the exact opposite. And I'll explain in a second. Here's what I think should happen. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Pete Carroll, Coach Frank Beamer, Jim Tressel, who's now the president at Youngstown State, and a few bureaucrats that you love so much out there. Everybody wants to bring politics into football and sports, and you want to make them some people who actually coached at least. If I'm going to use a politician or a bureaucrat to put on this committee, you better at least grab a Tommy Tuberville or at least get a few women out there who actually understand the entire scope from betting to the odds to the actual football knowledge. There are some females out there you can possibly find. We'll dive into that as well from my main man, TJ Moe on Whitlock, who broke that down earlier. But let's dive into some of my main reasons as to why they got it wrong, Smitty. We already know I don't like the 12-team playoff. It is what it is. That's my opinion, okay? Would have left it at 4. That's just me, the old man on the porch. Now, it is 12. I need to accept that as well as everyone else. And now let's dive into this particular 12 teams that they selected yesterday before the NFL games kicked off at 10 in the morning here on the West Coast. Oregon, Boise, ASU, Georgia, all won conference titles, right?
Yep.
Hey, Smitty, okay. But Boise isn't even in the big boy discussion when it comes to strength of schedule, nor does it pass the eyeball test when it comes to common opponent strength of schedule. They do, however, have the best loss of the season in a last-second field goal loss to Oregon. Now, if Boise goes on to win it, Smitty, then I'll shut up, and the committee is a bunch of geniuses. Now, Oregon, who gets the number 1 overall seed, will get a bye, but will sit there, Smitty, and wait for one of the 2 best teams in America. They're going to play Ohio State again or possibly Tennessee, who defensively could stop anybody in America. And if Nico's on fire, that team on offense is as good as anybody. And this Tennessee team can go on a run and win it all. Now, how do you claim to get it right if this is the reward for the regular season dominant performance you had in Oregon? The regular season seems to not have played a role in this selection and this committee whatsoever, Smitty. And I think that is the number 1 reason why it's wrong. If we're not going to pay attention to the regular season, the strength of schedule in that season, and the common opponent strength of schedule, we got it wrong. Georgia loses 2 games, Smitty. 1 to Ole Miss, who is out of the playoff.
Right.
And 1's to Bama, who is out of the playoff. Now, just let that sink in for you guys. Please let that sink in. Ole Miss beat Georgia. Bama beat Georgia. Both are out of the playoff. Now, I want to be clear. Georgia did beat Texas twice, who only lost twice on the season. So, to me, Texas looks and passes the eyeball test as they belong. They belong to me. Both losses are to Georgia, one of the most dominant teams over the last 5 years. But remember, Smitty, Texas did not beat a top 25 team this year. ASU wins the conference. Although the weakest conference in the group, they go 11-1 with their quarterback, 0-1 without him. They beat 4 top 25 teams and passed the eyeball test with a running back being a horse in Scatterboo, along with a quarterback who is playing as well as anyone in the country. Now, as for Texas, Smitty, Tennessee, Ohio State, SMU, Notre Dame, Clemson, Indiana, and Penn State, Smitty. Let me talk about them. Tennessee has the best schedule, strength of all these teams. Notre Dame has the worst loss of these teams, and Ohio State has the second worst loss to end the season, which is equally as bad as Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois. SMU didn't beat a top 25 team all year long. Neither did Indiana. And Penn State beat absolutely nobody. And didn't even play Indiana, Smitty, which could have at least eliminated one of these two mediocre teams, in my opinion, which would have allowed for another team like Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, or Alabama in. Now, I'm speaking fast. I get it, but we're going to dive into all this in depth. Just hear me out. As for my bracket, we got a bracket that I wanted to put in. We will dive into it. We will dive into it with Big Smitty. But I have my own bracket, and it's going to be controversial. It's going to start to show off with a bang or wherever Bailey has it. But listen, Smitty, we're here. We are here strong. Oh, there it is.
Oh, you got ASU number 2?
Woo. No, that's just one of the buys. That I didn't really put in order. I just gave it to Bailey. Bailey made this beautiful little artwork for me. They wouldn't be 2. I'd probably have
no, I got you.
That's roughly that's my teams.
Yeah.
That's my teams.
You got South Carolina and Alabama in. I disagree with this strongly, man. Like I think we want to put Alabama in here just because they're Alabama. I think we're so lost in the history of how great Alabama has been with Nick Saban that we just want to put them in there. But Alabama wasn't that good this year, man. I'm just calling it.
I feel you. But here's why. I said it 2 months ago on this show. I said I wouldn't be shocked if 5 SEC teams got in, and based on how the season was going, I wouldn't be mad at 5 SEC teams getting in because I'm grown up and grew up in the era where the strength of schedule and common opponent mattered. Right. And that is what the guy goes right on after the committee, or right after the selection committee goes on. The commissioner goes on, who ironically has Michigan ties, goes on there and basically says, okay, strength of schedule surely matters. And then Lane Kiffin goes straight to the internet and was like, he did not just say that. Because that is blasphemy. That is an absolute joke. Now, is the SEC overrated this year, Smitty? Absolutely. Yeah. But here's why. Because football's watered down. Like I've been telling y'all, there is no dominant conference anymore, Smitty. There is no dominant conference anymore. But if we took the lesser of all evils and I took the absolute best teams that play the best teams, meaning that I have to play Alabama one week, and the very next week I got to get ready for Ole Miss. And then the very next week I got to get ready for, let's just say, a Vanderbilt who was much better than anybody else expected. And then I got to go play Georgia. And those are a 4-week span. That matters to me, dog, because it goes by the injuries. It goes by the strength of schedule. It goes by who the talent is I got to face every week. The SEC still, even in a down year, played a much better conference schedule than anybody else. And we're bitching and moaning about Alabama playing Mercer at the end of the year and Georgia playing out. But that's been that way, Smitty, since the BCS was invented, when they just took the number 1 and the number 2 team and no one else had a say in anything. We just played number 1 and 2 at the end of it all. 1 played 2, and it was it, right, Smitty? That was it. Right. There was nothing. I listen, I'm not an SEC guy. I'm a West Coast guy. We've scrapped a Pac-12 team, by the way, which Oregon won their conference and Arizona State won their conference championship. That's in a league we scrapped. Wazoo went 8-3 or whatever. Some decent football was still being played out here on the West Coast in a league we scrapped that USC wanted to do. SC was the lead of this. They wanted to scrap it, and they were the worst fucking team in the whole goddamn thing. Irony is a real thing, and I'm glad USC is taking it in the ass right now. Pause.